And what I want to talk about in this session is automating tactically and strategically. People will describe this in different ways. For me, tactical is something that's very specific for a particular purpose, to solve a particular problem, to deal with something at a particular point in time. It might be a bit rough about the edges, a bit hacky. It's not something that is going to be useful for everybody. You might need some skills in order to run it, but it does the job. Something strategic is something that's very critical for the long term. We've agreed we're going to do it. We commit to it. It's maintainable. The people that need to use it have been skilled up. It's written in a way that everyone can use, and we commit to it. And what I found is that with this distinction, some of the questions that we have about automating are a little bit easier to answer. So questions like, should we unit test our automated execution code? Well, it depends. But then it's, well, it depends. Are you working tactically or are you working strategically? Because if you're working tactically, more than likely the answer is no. You probably won't unit test it. But if you're working strategically, then more than likely the answer is yes. There are probably parts that you will want to make it maintainable. So we're narrowing down the discussion and we're making it a little bit easier to make some decisions about this. Because I've worked on projects that have been agile, that have the normal agile issues. So we were working on a content management based website. So you've got the content management system generates the site. It was an agile project. We're working in sprints. There's not enough time for testing. There's never enough time for testing. There wasn't enough time for automating. The automating was only being done by the test team, not by the developers, but the developers were writing some unit tests. Now, agile and automating was new for the company. And we had taken on normal agile terminology like tech debt. So if we couldn't do the automation, it became tech debt that we're tracking. But we had the issue that it wasn't working particularly well. But we believed this is what you do in agile projects. We believed these were common issues that you experience on agile projects. And if you go online, you will see lots of discussion about people not managing to fit their testing into the sprints, tracking it as tech debt. Now, this is the issue between beliefs and reality. We had beliefs about agile, how it would work. The reality was it wasn't working. We weren't taking action because we didn't really understand what was going on. We didn't understand why all these rituals and approaches we were using weren't working. And it was because we hadn't created the strategic agreement to make them work. We simply had the notion, this is what you do in agile projects. This is why we're doing it. At this point, I had no distinction between tactical and strategic. This is not what entered my head when I was reviewing it. But as a consultant, when I come on site now, so I'm very often looking for, are these people operating tactically or strategically? And if they're operating strategically, but it's all very tactical and they're not committing to it, they are going to have problems. When you don't have this distinction between tactical and strategic, very often you're doing strategic work, but without the strategic commitment. So we were automating, taking all the acceptance criteria, automating them. That's a very strategic approach. But if you don't have the commitment to do that, then no one's going to help out. Stuff is going to slip. We don't make the application automatable because we're not really committed to it. The stories were not good enough. We didn't have a definition of done. Testing was slipping afterwards because we were doing all these strategic things that you have to do in an agile process, but without the strategic commitment. The work approach that we had did not fit the reality of the project. So looking back on it, if I had a distinction between tactical and strategic, what it would do is it would force me to make decisions. And when we develop software, when we automate, everything is filled with decisions. A lot of time we don't realize we're making the decisions because we have all these rituals we're going to do. A lot of the time we take heuristics as absolutes. So when we're writing code, we will say you aren't going to need it. But if we have a distinction between tactical and strategic, we might realize that we don't quite need it yet, but we're working strategically. So if we put it in, it will support us more easily in just a few days' time. Don't repeat yourself is a common thing that we are told, but it might be perfectly valid to repeat ourselves because we are operating tactically. If we understand the difference, then we can make decisions easier. And had we just automated chunks of our process, so automated the setting up of the environment, automated the checking, did this thing get deployed correctly? Are images still getting released? that would have been better for us than automating full stories. But we did not have a distinction between strategic and tactical. What we had was the notion of agile, and it's very different. Because we often get told that agile is the context within which testing works, and that is true. But there is another context, a more important context, and that is the project itself and the reality of that project and how it is working. And if we don't have that distinction between tactical and strategic, we treat agile as the context and we operate agile rather than the needs of that specific project. Now, all right, so what I'm going to try and do is see if we have any questions. Strategic versus tactical is not done at my company. The only distinction as being a tryout is the proof of concept. Do you see a minimum viable product as tactical or strategic? So that is a good question, because that is something I explored myself. Minimum viable product suggests that we have a strategic goal in mind, but creating a minimum viable product is a tactical approach for building it up and experimenting with it rather than trying to commit to something. I think the aim with a minimum viable product in a strategic situation is to have multiple minimum viable products to experiment in different ways. A minimum viable solution is a purely tactical approach. Minimum viable product suggests that we're building up in a more strategic way, because product suggests it's something that is going to be given to more people, that more people will use. But a solution can be slightly different, because that can be very minimal, so long as we get the actual work done. One of the interesting things, how does this work? In terms of problem solving, right? We have Russell Ackoff has some concepts around problem solving in terms of we can absolve a problem, we can resolve a problem, we can solve a problem, or we can dissolve a problem. Absolve means ignore, resolve means do something about it immediately. Both of those are tactical approaches. Solve moves us more into a strategic way. Solve suggests that we understand the issue and then do it, and dissolve means change the system so it never happens again. So someone's asked, do I have plans to deliver this session again with more time for it? Love to see you go into more detail. Well, here's the sales pitch. Right, after all my talks, I record them, I put them onto my EvilTester talks portfolio on my website, and there's going to be an extra hour of material covering this topic on there. So go look at eviltester.com or eviltester.com/talks. Look for the EvilTester talks, and $10 gives you access to 20 plus talks with hours of extra material. So thank you for allowing me to do a sales pitch, Charlie. That's very useful. And I think we're probably going to get cut off. So I'm just going to say thank you very much for turning up. I really appreciate it.